now insane in the mainframe. So when we're talking about episodes, which I'm gonna bring up to Champion season 3, just in a maybe a more general conversation. I typically jump to stuff later.
There should be an episode to champion the show.
That's true. Well, season 3 I tend to jump to later on.
It's been intense, but yeah,
like Godfellas and Roswell or Pharaoh to remember, or Time Keeps on Slipping, or Future Stock even. But this is a fantastic piece of work. It's one of the best. It's one of my favorite episodes of the show. It's such a ruthless premise. It really is one of those make Fry suffer, almost like one of the make Miles suffer episodes of Deep Space Nine. And worse than any, the Miles in that prison with Craig Wasson was pretty horrifying. In his mind.
Not as visually terrifying though, because this is a cartoon. You can get away with more.
And then where we want to sort of experience as a viewer is really tested when it's all cartoon, so it makes it more palatable, but it's all the more awful because it's a cartoon and they can realize it. And you imagine if this is all in real life, it would be some of the most shocking stuff ever depicted in a science fiction film, if ever real.
When Fry's in the cell with Roberto, that scene's intense.
God, that's always just like...
And he finally cracks. That scene is... I can't believe that's in an animated sitcom.
Well, it's like one of the... I really like this episode as a kid, but partly because it is kind of horrifying. Like, it's kind of exciting. You imagine yourself in these kind of situations, and it makes you feel more grateful for life in a way.
Yeah, sure.
But, it's one of these... It's just such a... It's not so much a sci-fi premise or a cerebral premise, but it's... What it does is...
this is a very smart episode in many ways. Like...
It's definitely a smart sitcom episode.
The humor is very deep. I guess maybe the premise isn't like Godfellas or something, but maybe like they conceptualize this episode as like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in Futurama, but it really goes more than that in a way. Maybe it is sitcom in the sense that it's through the realization of all the characters, especially Fry and Bender mostly, right?
Yeah.
But also, interestingly enough, the way all the Planet Express crew react to Fry's situation. Professor, his classic line about spending a horrible time in a robot asylum, but now it's nearly over.
Yeah. Good.
And then, like Hermes is just like weirdly bureaucratic. I don't know. This episode, it's... I guess it's not Futurama's most sci-fi concept. It is a bit zany, like cartoon, but
that's the thing.
It goes kind of cerebral though in a weird way. Like
it's definitely smart.
It sort of questions, like at least when Fry breaks down and stuff. Well, you sort of wonder, what would lead to such consequences, right?
I guess like it's the sort of episode where it's almost like Fry in this Kafkaesque circumstance. He's really kind of pushed to this insane limits. And then we see the end result of it where he comes to believe he's a robot. And then this is sort of when, the rest of the crew become, at least, we see, imagine Hermes and before, and then Leela, they seem to become a lot more concerned with Fry once he has sort of broken and believes he's a robot. And I think the end result is sort of this, where the episode is concerned, is kind of this very considered farce. Although when I say farce, it isn't to say that it's not like very cleverly woven. And one interesting, the thing that makes me think of the episode in very sitcom terms is and these are not members' complaints by any means from myself. It's the way it's all tied around the character of Roberto, who's just this sort of I mean, like, you can have a robot be that sort of crazy and unhinged because as a human it would be too over the top.
Yeah.
But as a robot, it's just like, some circuits gone haywire,
And they work it naturally, like Bender knows him,
Yeah, he's like a more extreme sort of way more unhinged Bender in a way. Like Bender's frightened of him toward the end there.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's sort of it's a comedy of errors ultimately, but to the point of being about how, like, callous the future world, or at least the crew, and I guess by extension the world, we see the judge, the how just insanity Judge Whitey of how Fry ends up in the asylum in the first place.
Yeah.
But all that's very sort of you know, just zany and not really... It's more
man.
reflecting Super Futurama's absurdism rather than the societal commentary, perhaps.
I don't know. I always thought Judge Whitey was hilarious. But, like, watching it again, it isn't zane at all. It's actually, like, completely accurate. Like, you know, in the episode we watched with the Bender's Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And he says he has to go home to a nice ham dinner in his mansion.
That depiction of Judge Whitey wasn't so zany.
Oh, and this one, it's more zany, but, like, once again, it's still things like pause at the spa or, like, poor people. You know, it's very, like, the Futurama writers must have, like, hated these people they knew. Because, like, the Judge Whitey, like, archetype or, like, stereotype seems very, like, particular. You know, like the sort of people they went to university with that became judges or something. Like,
I mean, they'd be a bit young to know people that old, but maybe the people they'd see on television or in the news, you know, like they're relatively... They can be relatively well-known personalities in the United States, you know.
I guess so, but, like, yeah, I love that Judge Whitey character. It's just such a... Like, yeah, that person, like, that is what judges are like. They're that out of touch, you know, and they're, like, presiding over other people's sentences to the point where Fry gets put into a robot asylum, right?
Yeah.
Because poor people are in, you know, human.
What's interesting about the whole, you mentioned the thing with the judges, it's like, there is a great deal of, like, sort of, like, self-importance that goes into the title of I'm going to be a judge. Like, you know, more so than, I mean, not that a judge becomes a judge via an undemocratic
The title
process.
of being a judge is you're honourable, so that's so self-important.
But think about, like, a politician has to be elected. I mean, judge has to be elected too, I guess, to some extent, and, like, you know, pass a certain threshold in terms of a test. But, you know, politician, you have to be elected, you know, bribe the right people or whatever. But with the judge, you think the judge might have even more of an ego because it's like, I have the power to declare what happens to you in a society. And it's almost like, the thing is, like, people who, and they do have to work very hard to become a judge, and so as a result, they're like, well, I was willing / able to do all that work, so therefore, on a subconscious level at least, they do kind of think they're better than the average person.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that that's reasonable, considering that it's not about them, it's about the letter of the law. They're just a fucking vessel for that, and so I don't think they should have an ego. I think that defeats the purpose of them being a sort of a representative of the law in that respect. It should have zero ego in it. It should be... It's like, it makes you think of that Man for All Seasons line where one of Thomas Cromwell, I believe, says to Thomas More, you know, refuses to say why he doesn't want to sign the paper saying that the Pope has no right to say that the king can or cannot divorce the wife, and Thomas Cromwell says, justice is what you're threatened with, Thomas, and Thomas says, then I'm not threatened. You know, it's not a matter of you know, sort of like intimidation and empower of one. It's simply the enactment of the law. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Well, maybe that's the concept of justice at least. Anyway, and if they are meant to be, they are called justices of the law, right? Like the
Justice of the Peace.
Justice of the Peace. I think it's a separate title because you can. A Justice of the Peace, you can see them at like a shopping centre to like change details that are wrong in like a bureaucratic institution.
Yeah, that is maybe that's in the English system. Who knows? But yeah, this episode, like you said, at its core, it is like zany, like Simpsons season 5-esque. You know, take Futurama to the limit sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like Futurama, in a way, like when Simpsons went zany, it did have things to say, but Futurama, I always felt has just more to say.
Oh, sure.
In a way.
I would agree.
Maybe that's a sci-fi setting, you know, when you set something in the 31st century, you can really be polemic about the, you know, contemporary time.
Rather than these pretensions about being a show about America or whatever.
Yeah, or at least... Yeah, no, for sure, because when Futurama does, like, polemical statements about America, it's like when Fry is dissing America in the sense of, like, not realizing that America's part of the world.
The closest thing they do is A Taste of Freedom, and that's more just about, like, sort of free expression period and more of just a, I don't know, sort of not even necessarily in American
Yeah,
sense.
that's an interesting point. I guess we'll have to get to that. But that's like their most South Park episode in a way.
Yeah.
Like their most South Park Republican. You know, that school of like centrist philosophy.
Yeah, but
cartoons.
We obviously will get to it later. But that episode, I think, doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's just sort of a fun,
it
breezy
doesn't.
Zoidberg episode.
Yeah, it's cleverly zany, that episode.
Yeah,
we'll get to it, but yeah.
But I mean, saying in the Mainframe, it's just sort of a brilliant, as I said, comedy of errors regarding like Fry and this hyper exaggerated sort of early 2000s society.
There's so many good jokes. Yeah.
I love Bender singing about the Battle of Waterloo, malfunctioning Eddie. The CIA cafeteria room, like it's one of the best scripts the show ever
of this episode
produced.
Has a joke in it. It's crazy, just as crazy as the premise.
Yeah, one of the most purely funny Futurama episodes, and that ties in with it being one of the most impressive. And it's but just the fact that it goes there, it uses science fiction to where it does use science fiction, it's to fuel the exaggerations and the hyperactivities, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really strong piece of the third season and the show overall. It's one of these, if you're watching the show for the first time, binging it, you know, one on Disney Plus or whatever, the first four, well, there's more than 4 seasons now, but this is the initial first 4.
Yeah.
And you get to this episode, you'd be like, holy moly, it'll stick out in your mind. It's very, very watchable.
Yeah,
I envy you for watching it for the first time, actually.
Yeah, this is like Futurama. Like I said, the last episode was getting into the groove. This is the proper groove. Like, this is almost maximum groove.
Yeah, I think Roberto is one of the most enjoyable villains on the show as well. I mean,
yeah, a great character. Like, especially for like a one-off character. He does come back a few times.
Yeah, he does.
Never significantly.
No.
This is like his one great sort of episode, you know.
Yeah, I think of other villains on the show being, you know, Nixon or Mom or the Omicronians.
Yeah, they always come back.
But yeah, no, Roberto was one where like he didn't need to be a recurring villain or anything, just like this brilliant one-off sort of antagonist.
Yeah,
he's really superb.
I agree. It's good he didn't like have another episode in that sense.
Great vocal performance, really iconic. I mean, the show had a lot of good villains. Being a sci-fi show, it could lend itself to having sort of antagonists here and there, like Robot Santa,
does his voice?
the Robot
Homer
Devil.
Simpson, or?
No, I don't think it's anyone that famous. I just quickly look that up. Who's another villain on the show? I don't know, one of Wernstrom counts. He's more of a rival to the professor.
Light villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, who'd be another villain?
David Herman voices.
Okay.
Roberto.
I guess in the Bender's Big Score, those like naked people, they're villains.
Oh, the Nudar, yeah. Bender himself, in a way.
Bender, yeah, a little bit. He's an anti-hero, the ultimate.
Zap Brannigan in a way as well.
Yeah, Zap Brannigan, he's a bit more deep than a villain though. Like, he, you know, because his incompetence is more his flaws. Zap Brannigan's an interesting character.
In a way, like never an antagonist, but sort of a villainous figure. Like they had a brilliant villain pastiche in Morbo, but obviously Morbo is not an antagonist as such.
Yeah, Morbo's classic.
One of the great characters of the show.
That's a great touch of Futurama. You just have like a monster alien that wants to eat humans. Is the news presenter.
Magnificent.
See, that's Futurama at its polemic best. You're right.
Yeah. You know. And we've coupled with Linda's like sort of like delightful ditzy laugh.
Yeah.
Oh, you.
It's like Alan Partridge's co-host or something. Yeah, no.
Because as a kid, you just like that absurdism, but that like sort of like mixed with like the banality of like everyday sort of regular media.
You could still understand.
Oh my god,
it
was amazing. It was a revelation.
Well, that's why the show is that good, really.
This Futurama was my Beatles in a way. It was really important on me. And I saw Star Wars as well, and it was a little less new. I saw Revenge of the Sith when that was a new release, but otherwise, that Star Wars was DVDs for me more so than, you know, not even the special editions in the late 90s that maybe released those. But so even more so, Futurama is my Star Wars. and my Beatles, or my Ghostbusters, whatever the fuck it is for each decade. Nirvana.
Did you ever see the Star Wars movies like without the extra scenes before you saw them with the extra scenes?
The versions I was familiar with mostly were, well, from television, 97.
Yeah.
And then I had the 2004 DVD. So I didn't see the theatrical cuts until later on.
Yeah, it's so weird, I guess. I never thought about it, but like as a kid I had like as hand-me-downs, you know, it was just like in the family's collection. The original cuts were on like a VHS.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow.
Yeah.
And then the you know, the special editions were in a box set.
Yeah.
And so I'd fluctuate between watching
Excuse me.
the special editions and the original, you know, ones. I didn't realize the whole, you know, thing, the context of what the special editions were. I was just like, oh, cool, you see Jabba there. That looks a little weird, though, you know?
Yeah, especially in that
but
time. Yeah.
Even as, like, a little kid, I was like, yeah, those original VHS... I would end up watching them more often. Not only because, you like, when you get the box set, you have to open Darth Vader's head. And
Oh, really? Wow, okay.
Yeah, because it's in, like, a... Darth Vader's head is, like, the box set cover.
Damn.
Whereas the VHS is just a case, you know? Yeah. But, yeah, the VHS ones were just, like, more to the point and, like, the original cut. There's just something about that original cut of Star Wars. It is classic.
Well, it's not jarring when you're seeing all these effects that don't really gel with it, right? Especially in 97.
Yeah.
Like, Jay just mentioned Jabba, and, like, you assume you have those lizards that the stormtroopers are riding on in the desert, right?
Yeah, I did notice the rocks as well. Yeah, and yeah, the lizards. There's, like, extra shots of the stormtroopers. Yeah. But, yeah, you know the rocks?
In front of R2?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't know if I was, like, remembering that wrong or not. I had to, like, compare it once when I was, like, 8 years old. How weird is that?
There's more rocks in front of R2.
Yeah, and I was like, holy shit, it is.
Why'd they put more... The measures as a kid, you're like, I don't get it. Why'd they put more... How can he get out?
Yeah.
How'd he get in?
It was, yeah, the difference between those is, yeah. But anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. It's,
Yeah, it goes.
But like, I don't know, the original cut of Star Wars feels like Futurama in a way. It's just so, like, fresh and, like, right on the point, you know?
Yeah, Star Wars is interesting like that. I mean, I guess Star Wars is a bit, like, sort of slightly straightforward in a respect. I mean, Empire was really, really, really sort of took the narrative in a bit more complicated direction, but... I guess to me it's like I like where Futurama sticks with me in a way, and I still appreciate Star Wars, especially as like individual films, you know. And you can do interesting things with it, even like Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy sort of extracts that in a fascinating way. Restrictions which Lucas kind of put on the Star Wars verse, and then what a science fiction writer can sort of bring into that is fascinating.
Man, there's this old guy I know in his 60s who, like, his son in his 20s has gotten him into reading the EU. Like, books of Darth Bane and the Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Because he only got into Star Wars, like, I guess he didn't like it in the 70s. So he only got into it with all, like, the Disney shows.
Yeah.
And now he's reading the EU. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, to me, like, I just described...
The guy in the 20s.
Sorry?
The guy in their 20s.
No, in his 60s.
Wow.
His son's in his 20s. Who, like, got him into, like, the
sure.
EU.
Yeah.
And the shows or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, like, to me, Star Wars is what I just described. Like, VHS is the original cut and the 97, like, special edition.
To me, it was something that adults talked about. Like, it was this reverent thing that meant, like, a lot to them.
Yeah.
You know, there was this kind of, what was all the fascination. It was always already sort of this grand institution at that point.
It was, like, divided down the middle, though. It was either that or, like, you know, the Queen song, I don't like Star Wars.
I never heard that much. Like, it seemed to be quite liked to most people.
I remember people would either, like, love Star Wars or they'd just be like, why does everyone love Star Wars?
I didn't really hear... I mean, I guess maybe I didn't hear that much people talk about Star Wars by comparison. I mean, kids seem to like it a lot.
Oh, yeah. Kids love Star
Wars. The prequels are coming out, so they were sort of... It was new and fresh in our minds.
The only thing kids love more than Star Wars is Spider-Man.
Seemingly, yeah. I was never as into Spider-Man. Other kids were, but and I liked it sort of to a degree, but it just not. Like, I remember getting into the X-Men. I thought the X-Men were super cool.
I'm talking more
and
like
the Hulk as a power fantasy was like way more appealing to me, just bashing other people up, you know.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Oh, just like, even it was Halloween recently, I was walking home and there's all these like primary school kids walking around the streets with their parents doing trick-or-treating or whatever.
Yeah, it was a bit,
and there's
like...
It
rained.
There was like dozens of Spider-Mans. I'm like, man, kids love Spider-Man.
No, he's still popular.
Like little kids, like 6-year-olds, you know what I mean?
I saw a kid with a Batman action figure recently, and I'm like, I wonder if that kid's seen the newer film, you know what I mean? Because to that kid, that's the Batman film, is Robert Pattinson, you know what I mean? And to me, it's like, and I'm like, hey kid, I saw The Dark Knight when I was in year 6, and you'd be like, oh wow, that might be, that's a long time ago, you know what I mean?
Man, do you know what the Batman movie for me as a kid was?
The 89 film.
We never owned it as a family, but we'd rent it all the time from the video
really?
store. Yeah, because it was Batman.
Yeah.
It was like the 1989...
Let's do the Bat dance.
Man, 1989 Batman on VHS looks like shit.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
You can't understand what's going on.
I'm so glad that like there's a proper Blu-ray digital version.
Yeah, you get Roger Pratt's cinematography in all its glory.
Because on VHS, that movie looked like, if you watched it in the day...
It's over.
If there was any glare in the room you're watching it on the TV, you can't see anything.
Yeah, and Australia is like the capital of the world where like TV glare is concerned.
Australia is just
maybe some parts of the States too, to be fair.
As far as I'm concerned, Australia is like, you know, the city from Dahlgren by Sam Delaney. It's just so glary, you know.
Wasn't that like also Asimov's Nightfall, where it was never night?
Yeah, that's a weird... Yeah.
I saw the film.
They had like 5 sons or something.
You can see that on FOTD. There's some screen caps if you're interested, everyone. But yeah, that's an interesting world.
Damn, what were we talking about? Insane in the Mainframe?
I like padding out this future. Just like if people can complain, they can let me know. I suspect sometimes they're just scared I'll go off with them. But I only do that sometimes in comments. I barely do that.
Subscribe to Mr. Beast.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Fuck every YouTuber that isn't my channel, basically. Except for, like, I don't know, Radio Warner for YouTube channel. And subscribe to that.
Piscator Severe.
Oh, no, that's a great channel. That's a great channel. I've shouted that out before. But anyway, thanks, everyone.